Welcome back to the Good Gluten-Free Girl podcast, my gluten-free friends. I just feel so lucky to do this as my job. It brings me so much joy to share my trials with you guys of living with celiac disease. And I had just have a unique experience, which I'm sure some of you are going to face this summer because it's like camping season and everyone's going camping. I'm a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and every summer, the youth do a camping trip. Right now, my responsibility in the church is over the young women of the youth group. And so we do a girls' camp every year. And this is now my second year in my congregation doing girls camp. Last year, we had a smaller group. We got an Airbnb and we did like a boating trip, and we went to like Salt Lake City and we did Temple Square, and that was really fun. But this year was like legit camping. And legit camping is not my favorite thing. I didn't grow up camping. I don't enjoy camping. I really love my bed. I really love my own sleep, and I like the comfort of being in control of food. So this was really difficult for me because I wasn't in charge of the food. Like multiple other people were designated and given the responsibility to prepare all of the food. Now, this group that we camped with, we had over 150 people at the campground, and we had 3 days of camping. No cell phone service. And I was really anxious going into it. I genuinely didn't want to go because of the food stress that I knew it was going to cause me. But, I was really prayerful, and I was like, I know that it's going to be a really great experience. I just feel really anxious about what's the food situation going to be like? And I knew that I was going to be going to camp like months ago. So I found out who was on the food committee. And this is my number one tip for camping. If you're going on a camping trip where other people are in control, which is kind of is more rare, I would say that more so those of you who are going to go camping are in charge of your own food, and you know what you're going to bring and you have control of that. But if you are in a situation where you aren't in control of it, contact and reach out to the committee who was over the food. This is what I did. I went over to a lady in my neighborhood. I went to her house and I just said, what's the general food plan right now? And let me give you like swaps for everything that you're going to be making, and ideas for food that you can buy, snacks that you can bring, and also just tips on how to prepare food for people with celiac disease. Now, among the 150 people that were there at camp, there were 5 of us who were gluten-free. 2 of us had celiac disease, but I would say that I am maybe the one that takes it the most seriously. So maybe it wasn't anxiety inducing for other people. I don't know if they have celiac disease, but I was the one that I have celiac disease, and the other people, I didn't know if they had celiac disease or if they just prefer to be gluten-free for whatever reason. I wasn't sure. There was one other girl that was in my care that had celiac disease that lives in my neighborhood. And I said, I'll make sure that she's taken care of. I told her mom I would make sure that she's taken care of. So, there was the stress of that. And so I ended up going to this girl in my neighborhood's house who was on the food committee. And I said, okay, let me send you pictures of all of the foods that you're going to need. Like, obviously I knew we were going to be doing s'mores. So here is what you can buy from Walmart. They have Char, they have Pamela's, like there are options for graham crackers. And if you're going to be doing sandwiches, or if you guys are going to be doing burgers or whatever, like here's the bread you can buy, here's the buns you can buy, here are the snacks that you can bring. And also like you need to have like people designated and specifically over the gluten-free food, so that they kind of just take charge of that. They know that food needs to be prepared separately, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I wanted to have that conversation with her because I needed someone to know that it was serious and that it was causing me anxiety to come to camp. And she said, we'll make sure that we take care of everything. So the night before camp, I was still feeling anxious, and I was planning on driving with somebody else. And I just kept having this thought, that I should bring my own car. And I'm like, because if I get sick at girls' camp, if I get glutened at girls' camp, we are 2.5 hours away from home. I have no cell phone service. And if I have to put somebody else out because I'm barfing my guts out and I'm in excruciating pain and I can't participate in anything basically the next day because I'm going to be like so fatigued, so lethargic, having been throwing up all night, like that just is miserable, right? You don't want to be dealing with that. And so advocating for your needs beforehand is so important so that you don't experience and have such a negative experience when you go to an event or camping or a vacation or whatever, right? Having your trip being ruined is the worst case scenario. So you have to do your part in that. And I'm really glad that I did, obviously. And that's, I preach that, and that's something that I do anyway. But just going to camp, just knowing that I'm not going to be in the kitchen, that I'm going to be with the girls doing hikes, doing activities, doing crafts, doing service projects, things like that. I wasn't going to be around like the mess hall of the campsite, and just hoping that somebody is taking care of me, right? That's just a lot of stress. And so we get to camp, and the girl that I had originally spoken to about my needs was not there. And I just thought, oh no, who is going to be taking care of the food? So you guys, I'm a Karen, and I have to be, and I don't freaking care. Like, I will be a Karen. I will be like bossy, and I will be upfront, and I will be like very clear in my needs because I don't want to get sick in a situation like this. So, they had like, you know how Costco has those like big black totes with the yellow lid, and they're like big, right? They hold a lot of storage. When I got there, they had a whole snack table spread out, and it was just full of, these bins were just full of different snacks. And then there was one bin specifically that just said gluten-free girls only, and it had a huge label on it. And I opened it up, and it had, oh, I actually took a picture of it. I took a picture of all of the food that I ate at girls camp because I wanted to remember for the podcast. So let me just scroll back. So I opened it up, and there was a huge Costco-sized bag of Skinny Pop popcorn. There were 2 packages of gluten-free Oreos. There was a Simple Mills crackers. There were the Heavenly Hunks cookies from Costco. There were the Good Thins crackers. And then they had a cooler that was full of like carrots, apples, string cheese, yogurt, Go-Gurts. So they had like veggie packs. They had packs of almonds and pistachios. They had like real food snacks, and then they also had like snack food snacks. And so I was like, okay, well, if anything, I just have to survive off of these. If the food situation doesn't feel safe to me and I don't want to take the risk, at least I can have some gluten-free Oreos and some skinny popcorn. But of course I didn't want to have to just eat that because I'm like, I need protein. I need to eat like nutritious meals in order to function. So I was really relieved to see that we had some gluten-free snacks. So let me dive into all of the meals that we had. And I will preface this by saying I did not get sick at all at camp. There was one incident that I'm so glad that I walked into the kitchen when I did. It was almost like the Holy Spirit was like, go to the kitchen right now. And I did. And I caught something that was about to happen that would have been cross-contamination that I was able to prevent. So thank the heavens, right? Okay, the first thing that they served us for dinner was like brisket nachos. So it was just the Costco tortilla chips, which are gluten-free, but they also had a separate table. So there was one whole table where everyone lined up to get their food, and then there was a gluten-free table there was a husband and a wife that was in charge of serving all the gluten-free campers. And they had gloves, and if people came to the table, they said, you cannot reach in, we will serve you your food. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. Like, they're taking care of me. And I just like felt like some relief, So we had brisket nachos, and some fruit. So I got the nachos, and I got tomatoes and cilantro and onions, the brisket, and then they had like nacho cheese, and then they had shredded cheese. And I took both of those. I was able to read the ingredients on the back of that nacho cheese, like the sauce cheese, no gluten containing ingredients. And so I had a little bit of that. And then I took like a milky lactase enzyme for that meal. I brought all my milky supplements for it with me because I figured there's going to be a lot of dairy in a lot of these meals, which there was. There was dairy in every single meal. So I'm glad that I did bring my milky supplement with me. And then so that was dinner the first night. And then the next day, for breakfast, they were doing breakfast burritos. And this is when I had that inkling to go into the kitchen. And I went into the kitchen and had just finished cooking all of this breakfast sausage. And then there was like a huge griddle, like a really, really big industrial size griddle, where you would cook like, I don't know, 20 pancakes at a time, right? Like a really big griddle. And they were warming up flour tortillas. And as they were taking the tortillas off, I saw that they had a huge bowl of scrambled eggs and they were literally about to pour the scrambled eggs onto this big griddle. And I was like, oh no, I was like, are you guys planning on cooking all those scrambled eggs on this tortilla? And they were like, yeah. And I was like, these would not be considered safe for those of us who are gluten-free because you just cooked all those flour tortillas on this griddle. And the one lady that I hadn't talked to, she was like, oh my gosh, I didn't even think of that. And I'm like, thank goodness I went in when I did, because had I not said that and they were like, oh, here's the scrambled eggs, they're not even thinking that the scrambled eggs would be cross-contaminated with flour tortillas, right? So I luckily had stopped them and they were like, oh my goodness, like, we're so glad that you stopped us. Like, we will prepare 2 big pans of gluten-free scrambled eggs that are gonna be cooked in the same pan that the sausage was just cooked in. And I said, okay, wonderful, perfect, thank you. So then when it was time to go get breakfast, I got in line at the gluten-free table, which that was one nice perk about it. I didn't have to wait in any lines because there were only 5 of us who are gluten-free and we could just walk right up to the table and get our food. They were like, we have corn tortillas that you could have a breakfast burrito with, and I just would prefer not to because of the carbs. So I had I'm like, for those of you that are on YouTube, I'm going to show you because it was actually so yummy. I had a big, huge serving of scrambled eggs, some sausage and scallions, and then hash browns, and then a side of blueberries and strawberries. And it was actually so, so yummy. And I could have had it in a corn tortilla and made it into a burrito type thing. But I wanted to eat it just like this, and it was really good. And I thought, okay, I'm getting my protein, I'm getting some carbohydrates. Of course, because I have type 1 diabetes, I'm always thinking about, counting carbs and knowing like what my blood sugar is going to do based on what I'm eating. And so this was a really delicious meal, actually. So that was the breakfast for that day. And then when lunchtime came around, I just was not super hungry. So I just had some pistachios and a protein shake for lunch. And I brought my own protein shakes and they had a fridge in the mess hall kitchen. And I put in 3 protein shakes. I used the Orgain like ready-made protein shakes and I just put those in the fridge. So I had a protein shake and I had some pistachios for lunch. And then for dinner, we did burgers and they were like, nothing else has been cooked on this grill. We're just cooking all of the burgers on this grill, on this griddle. And we've been washing it in between whatever we cook. So just so you know. And I said, thank you so much for letting me know. Like that gave me peace of mind. So I just did a lettuce wrapped burger. They did have bread. They didn't have buns, which I'm like, hamburger on Udi's gluten-free bread just did not sound appealing to me. So I just had a lettuce wrapped burger. And I prefer to have a lettuce wrapped burger because of the carbs. But I did have some potato chips and I had a slice of watermelon and I had a just burger with onions and tomato and lettuce wrapped. So that worked out great. And then that evening we did s'mores as like a bedtime treat at our own little campsite. And they had, sorry, those of you who are on YouTube get to see the content, but they had the Char gluten-free graham crackers, and then they also had the Goody Girl chocolate lined cookies. They kind of look like the EL fudge cookies. So they had those, and then they had the separate crackers for us. And I just made it a point to like, as soon as we started doing s'mores, I just grabbed, and it was a brand new like marshmallow skewer. The wrapping was still on them. So I opened it and I grabbed it and I roasted my own marshmallow first before everybody was putting their marshmallows on their gluten graham crackers. So just something else that you're always having to think of when you're gluten-free. So we had s'mores for a nighttime treat that night, and my blood sugar. My blood sugar was not loving me because I normally never eat treats like that at the end of the night. So my blood sugar like alarm alert was going off in the middle of the night, and I felt bad for my tent mates that I was sleeping with. I'm like, sorry, diabetes. Anyway, so that was day 2, breakfast and dinner, and then snack. And then the next day we just did deli sandwiches. So they had us again with the separate table and everything. They had different types of cheese. They had turkey, they had ham, they had mayo and mustard, and they actually, which unless you're in this world, you're not thinking this way, but they had like the jar type of mayo and mustard and ketchup and all that stuff. They were like in huge, like industrial sized jars because we were feeding 150 people. And I was like, oh, this is like one of those places where cross contamination can happen. And I'm like, I sure hope that the gluten-free mayo hasn't accidentally been like dipped in by a gluten eating person, And so they had written gluten-free on all of the condiments, but had they done squirtable, it would have just been more convenient. So squirtable is just always better when it comes to being gluten-free. But because they had a separate table and everything was labeled, I was like, okay, great. And they were like, this is actually a brand new mayo. It hasn't been used. And they served me so that they just were like, we just feel safer if we serve the food and then we're in control of who is coming and taking the food. By the second meal of the trip, they knew which girls were gluten-free. So they knew like who they were serving and how to serve them. So that lunch for that day, I'm trying to remember what breakfast was. Breakfast that morning, I didn't take a picture of it. It was pancakes and bacon. And then they had sugar-free maple syrup, which I was like, thank you. Thank you. I'm so glad there's sugar-free maple syrup just because of diabetes. Of course, like there's still that other added layer for me. Not only the gluten-free stuff, but then also just like carbs and sugar and stuff like that you have to be aware of. And the pancakes were great. And I was like, these pancakes taste too good. I'm like, these pancakes are so good. I'm like, they must be the King Arthur because the King Arthur pancakes are just amazing. So I go to the kitchen and I said, can you tell me what the pancake mix is? And she was like, oh, it's the Crusties. And like I could see in the kitchen, like the huge Costco bag of the Crusties pancakes mix. And I was like, gluten-free Crusties? And she's like, yeah, it just came in a little box and it's from Krusty's. And then I like knew immediately like which kind she was talking about. And I haven't tried the Krusty's pancakes, but I actually really liked them. So I was really impressed by those pancakes. And then I had pancakes, bacon with some sugar-free maple syrup. That was my second breakfast of the trip. Then the lunch was the deli sandwich and I got cheese, I asked for double, like 2 slices of ham, 2 slices of turkey, because again, protein. And I just wanted to be more conscious of my protein intake on my trip. So they used Udi's bread. So Udi's isn't the best, but whatever, I'll still eat a sandwich on an Udi's bread. So I had like a deli sandwich with some celery sticks and some Cheetos because I was already taking a lactase enzyme for the cheese on my sandwich. So I'm like, might as well eat the Cheetos. I freaking love Cheetos, but I would never just like snack on Cheetos because again, carbs and dairy. So I didn't eat those. I wouldn't normally eat those, but I'm like, YOLO, I'm already taking a lactase enzyme. So I'm having some Cheetos. So that was meal number 2 on the trip. And then I didn't take a picture of every single food that I ate. But the last meal of that evening was a pasta dinner, which I was actually kind of nervous about because I'm like, you guys are cooking the pasta in the separate pot, right? Like, I just like went in every time before mealtime just to like double check and ask questions because I just didn't want to get sick on this camping trip. And one of the hard things about this camping trip was I didn't have cell phone service. Like we were like out. We were like clear up in the mountains at this like campground that had no cell phone service. Like I lost cell phone service like 20 minutes before we actually got to the campsite. So I didn't even get a chance to tell my husband, like, I'm not going to have any cell phone service. And, we were roughing it. I mean, obviously it wasn't the worst type of roughing it because we had like a mess hall with a kitchen and some bathrooms and running water, we were grateful for, but it was just a really cool campsite, but no service was hard. But I had to find ways to charge my phone so that I could check my blood sugar as well. I needed to know what my blood sugar was at. So I charged my phone in my car, like every morning after breakfast, I'd go to my car and I'd just turn it on and I would give myself some charge so that I could survive. Anyway, back to the pasta. So the pasta dinner, I went in and I could see that they were just using the Barilla spaghetti. And then they just had like marinara sauce and a salad with the Olive Garden salad dressing, which is gluten-free. So I had a big, huge salad and a small serving of pasta because pasta is just basically empty carbs and the marinara sauce is basically sugar. So everybody else who was eating gluten got to have Italian meatballs. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm not going to get any protein in this meal. So I'm going to try to eat my best to eat a lot of fiber before I eat this. And so I had like 2 big helpings of salad before I had my pasta. And again, I'm just conscious of the way that I eat. A book that I read after I was diagnosed with type 1 was a book called The Glucose Revolution. And I learned so much about like just blood sugar hacking and ways to reduce blood sugar spikes. And the order in which you eat your food does impact your blood sugar and how fast glucose enters your bloodstream, and sugar enters your bloodstream. And so that's why I ate 2 helpings of salad before I had the pasta. Um, Anyway, we did yoga one of the mornings, and then we did Zumba one of the mornings, and then we did a hike another day. So I'm like, I was still thinking, okay, I'm being active, I'm exercising, and I'm still getting at least 10,000 steps a day. There was like, the campsite was huge and we were doing all sorts of different activities. And then I kind of always just like made sure I had a snack on hand, and I had some Chomps beef sticks. And again, with the the Orgain protein drinks that I brought with me that I put in the fridge, I was able to have a protein shake every day. So that was really helpful. Um, the only sad thing that was like, I don't know, sad, not sad. I shouldn't say sad because it's fine. One of the mornings for breakfast, like the day that we were leaving, they just did Costco muffins, and they didn't have Costco muffins or any sort of muffin for us. And it was like in this moment that I was like, I wish that somebody had told me beforehand, like, here's what we were eating. And that's one of my pieces of advice to you is, if you're going to camp and someone else is in charge, maybe ask for a food itinerary. Because by the time the week before that camp trip comes up, they should know what the plans are for the meals, because they have to buy food, right, for the amount of people that are going. And if you can see, oh, okay, the day that we're leaving the campsite, they're doing Costco muffins and fruit, then you can say, oh, you could actually run to Trader Joe's and you could get the muffins, the same type of muffins for the gluten-free people. Or let me send you a picture of somewhere that you can get them, like at Kroger or Walmart, and we could get like a muffin so that we had something to eat. Like for us, we just had fruit, like there wasn't even an option. And then another one of the nights, it was donuts for a dessert, and they didn't provide donuts for us either. They just were like, oh, here, you guys can open up the gluten-free Oreos that were in the snack box. And I'm like, again, had someone asked me, or had someone ask me for like, what can I do? Because I had reached out to the committee and I had said, like, if you need any help, I can give you suggestions of anything. Like literally, I know where you can get and what brand to get of everything that you're planning on making for all the gluten eaters. And I was sad because, it wasn't just me that didn't get to have a donut or didn't get to have a muffin. There were 5 girls that didn't get to have that, which maybe they're not thinking that same way. Maybe they're totally fine with it, but it doesn't feel good to be left out, obviously. So, asking ahead of time, what's the food itinerary? And then you can give suggestions of where they can purchase things. Like, it would have been nice if we had muffins, or it would have been nice if we got to have donuts and hot chocolate that night. Like, we just got to have hot chocolate, but of course I didn't drink that because I can't do dairy, and because I wouldn't drink that anyway because that would just spike my blood sugar. So like, there's all these other layers on top of being gluten-free, especially when you have other food intolerances or you have type 1 as well. Anyway, so these are just my tips. Reach out to the committee, reach out to whoever is in charge of food, and find out what the plan is, and come prepared with a backup for some things, and communicate your needs to those who are in charge so that you have an enjoyable experience. I'm super grateful for the experience. It was really fun. I had a really awesome, like, spiritual experience. I had an awesome time serving in this capacity and going to camp, and just actually it was really nice to escape from my phone, not having service, being in nature, and just having a really cool opportunity to be closer to God. And that's the whole purpose of camp, is to help people draw closer to Christ and to develop in their own personal testimony. And I really love that about girls camp. But I don't know if I plan on going camping again. Like, I just don't enjoy camping. The last time we camped with our kids, it was a nightmare, and I'm like, okay, now my kids are 6 and 4, maybe it would be more enjoyable. But then I think about it and I'm like, no, maybe when they're 8 and 10, like maybe that's when we'll try it again. We just, like, it's just such a hassle and it's such a pain, and I'm like, why would I drive an hour away or even 45 minutes away to go and camp when I could just go do the fun camping things and then drive home and sleep in my own bed and actually get a good night's sleep? Like, one of the nights, well, the girls just stayed up late every night, and I was over the age of 14. Like, all of the girls that are 14 years old, me and 3 other women were over all of them. And they just love to stay up late and chat and, and be loud and be rowdy. And that was like, I'm like, I want my sleep. And the last night that we were there, they were up until about 2:15 in the morning. And then the sun is out at 5:30 in the morning, just beating on your tent. So Definitely did not get good sleep and was very happy to come home, but I did have a really awesome experience. And I'm glad that I went, and I'm glad that I did some self-advocacy, and I'm glad that I had food. I feel really grateful for that. I hope these tips helped you. I hope they gave you the confidence to go camping or go to girls camp. If you're a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and maybe you have a child who's going to girls camp, you have to do some advocacy for them. Um, and if you're gluten-free, or and for the type 1 people too, like, you always need to make sure that you're gonna have somewhere to keep your insulin, because I actually had 2 I brought 2, pens of insulin. I brought long-acting and short-acting just in case. Obviously, I always just in case bring things, and I brought another Dexcom just in case, and I'm glad that I did, but both of my pens sat in my car, because I had forgotten about them in the boiling 90-degree heat during the day, and insulin will go bad if it's not in a temperature controlled environment. And so always making sure that you have your own cooler that always is replenished with ice to keep it cool, or buying some sort of device that you can keep your insulin in. There's lots of cool devices out there. I wasn't super prepared in that, but luckily I'm not insulin dependent right now because of Ozempic. But um, that was just another thing they have to think about. So if you eat gluten-free and you also have diabetes, those are just other things that you have to think about when camping, and making sure that your insulin stays safe and stays effective, because I had to throw both of my pens away. And that sucked. But anyway, I hope that these tips were helpful for you and you have the confidence to go camping. and or don't go camping. You don't have to go camping. It's not that enjoyable. The spiritual experience was awesome, and I'm really glad that I got to connect with the girls that I'm over and just develop stronger friendships, and my relationship with God, which was really great and a cool experience. But anyway, hope my tips are helpful, and I will talk to you guys next week.